All right, so we're back with more Dark Souls in another year again. Hard to believe this has been going on for so long, even though I've only recorded was this the fifth episode or fifth video? In case you hadn't noticed, this is a post-recording audio. I don't know what exactly happened when I recorded this session. I think maybe I forgot to switch certain settings on OBS or something. I didn't have the right channels, or my mic was off or something. But I basically recorded like an hour and some of footage, and none of my commentaries there. And maybe if I had edited this video when I recorded it, it would have been okay and I would have remembered what I was talking about. But this is, I think, about a year old. I think it was recorded sometime in January of last year. So I'm really behind on a lot of my recordings. 2025 wasn't a great year for the channel. And I kind of fell out of the habit of recording things. And once I got out of the habit, it was harder for me to get back into it and get into the zone. But I'm hoping to change that. You know, I want to record more videos and put more out there this year than last year. And I figured Dark Souls was just the perfect one to start with. So things are going to be a little more, I don't know, maybe messier, since I won't have, I don't know, notes on what I was talking about at the time or anything. So I'm just going off of what I'm watching here. And I think at this point I was just trying to clear up everything in the forest before moving on to the next area. So, like, I'm going over here to go grab a pretty important weapon, kind of like the equivalent of the Drake longsword in Dark Souls 1. An early game weapon that will help out quite a bit, especially for the next zone. And I thought that the key for the DLC for one of them was over in that pit, but I think it's actually, or in that tunnel. I think it's in the fire pit down there with the lizards that I'll be visiting pretty soon. And unfortunately, I forgot about that one, so I'll probably have to come back here again at a later point. But, yeah, I got some notes on things I want to talk about regarding Dark Souls, but I think I'll save that for once I get through all this here. It's going to be a bit of a longer video. Even at 2x speed, it's still going to be taking me a little while to get through all of this. So, stick around. Enjoy some peak souls as I go around collecting a few things. I think over here is one of the first areas where, well, that's not exactly true. There was a hidden door in an earlier spot, past that gate that I was over at, where you pick up, I think it's a staff, or some sort of magic related items. But down here there is also one, except this time, hidden behind a Pharaoh's lockstone, which is just another thing that they kind of just dropped after this, which I think is a bit of a letdown. I think it's pretty neat to have these items that you can use at certain locations to open up secrets or some items or something. And what do we have? Titanite slab. And Chloranthy ring, one of the best rings in all of Dark Souls, and a Titanite slab, which is kind of crazy to be picking that up so early. I can't remember how many are in Dark Souls 2, or if you can even farm them. But still, like, that'd be pretty rare to get one of those. Good old Turtle Knight. job. Poking the turtle. I think I had gotten every... Oh no, there's still one more thing that I hadn't gotten yet. Oh yeah, drip souls. Looking good. Where am I going?
Is that it? Here, to see light.
Oh yeah, Nesta shard. Can't remember where I got that from. Like, not only has it been a year since I recorded this, but, you know, it's been a long time since I've gone through Dark Souls 2, so I have kind of forgotten a lot of things. Which is why I'm really excited to go through this again. And I especially want to, I don't know if I'll record it, but go through Scholars of the First Sin, which I've never done. Oh. Good job. That one should have counted. This was the first time I ever did this jump down here. I think you can also survive it with the cat ring, but I didn't want to spend the money on that when I could just get down there for free. It's a pretty popular, lesser known little secret of doing the plunging attack on those guys to get down there earlier. Since you're supposed to normally go there once you get the iron key, I think to take the elevator down. What am I doing here? Doing a little ring swapping. Oh, I was probably checking to see how much stamina I was recovering, if I could notice a difference. I think it's pretty minor with the first Chloranthy. Oh, and here we are. One of my favorite areas of Dark Souls 2. I really like the aesthetic of this zone. It gives a very like Anor Londo feel. And at the time when I first got to this area in my first playthrough, I thought this was Anor Londo. But since Dark Souls 3, seems pretty unlikely that it's actually Anor Londo. And I think in the lore, it's like it was a group of people from Anor Londo that traveled here and made this city that eventually got submerged in the ocean. But such a pretty aesthetic. Sublime bone dust. Can't remember what that's used for. He's guarding that lever. It's a pretty neat little design to have these enemies guarding these levers. So it's kind of optional if you want to, well, at least if you want to fight this guy. And as you're about to see, adds another ring to that area over there. Which is totally optional and pretty unnecessary for what's going to be over there. Pretty early gank spot, running there and trying to fight those three guys. But not a problem if you can just lure them out and fight them one by one. There's probably gonna be some spots where my commentary is a little lacking. I'm not used to talking for so much on something that I'm not like actually doing at the moment. I'm kind of like reviewing my gameplay at the same time. So that's the second lever, and there should be one more, I believe. Jeez. And pretty nice that they kind of go one by one, too. They're a little honorable. Close one. I wonder if these guys are related at all to the stone giants in Dark Souls 1. Probably not. The connections from this game to Dark Souls 1 are pretty vague. It feels a lot less connected than Dark Souls 3 does. I think that's one of the things I really like about Dark Souls 2. It has a very disconnected sort of feeling, where it's not like a direct sequel. Like, if it didn't have the title Dark Souls, it could very well have been its own setting, with just like homages to the Dark Souls series. It kind of reminds me a lot of Majora's Mask to Ocarina of Time. It has a very kind of like dream-like feel to it, I guess. Yeah, and you can see over there is Majula, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense how I got from there to here. But still a nice little touch to get some sort of perspective. I think I'm trying to figure out how much HP I'm getting back from this ring. It reduces the amount of hollowing that you go through, which, unlike Dark Souls 1, I think it's actually closer to Demon Souls. I think Demon Souls was also like it, where the more you died, the less health you would have. But maybe I'm misremembering that altogether. I've never actually played Demon Souls, just because it was a PS3 exclusive. The only Souls that I have not played, actually. Unnecessary jump. Alright, and here we have the first boss fight. Now, prepare yourself. This is going to be a hard one. Dragon Rider doesn't mess around. Very high-octane boss. Coming off of Night Rain to this, it is pretty jarring how slow everything feels. And dealing with a quote-unquote boss that has like 3 attacks. And normally when I fight this guy, I don't even actually fight him. I just do the cheese where you don't even bring up any of the rings for the boss fight, and you just walk a few steps and let him fall off into the water. Because, I mean, we're not really missing anything fighting this guy. Some regular enemy that pretends to be a boss. And up here we have an NPC.
Are you from these parts? My name is Lycia. I have come to spread the art of miracles, a practice of which I am a disciple. I can see that you are well suited to comprehend their wondrous power. But the cost of it, that's for your heart to decide. I'd heard awful rumors about this place, and I'm afraid they were all true. The king, gone. The earth, ravaged. The burden on the people weighs heavy. I fear that, by now, they may have scarce room in their hearts for miracles. Why did I come here? Well... do I need any other reason than to spread the gospel of miracles? My preceptor always said this art should be shared with the world. And such is my only wish. Sometimes I fight the urge to pack up and go back home. It is... well, I must do this. And being out here all alone only makes this a more fitting test of my fortitude. I expected this cathedral to be bustling, but there's hardly a soul to be found here. Without any goings-on, I'll have to move soon. To a place I could help the gullible by teaching the good word. I expected
Yeah,
this.
slip of the tongue.
No need for
Very
medical, but I'll
trustworthy character, not shady at all. But she might be one that I come back to. I don't know what I want to do with this build. Maybe I want to get some faith in there.
Here, to see light. However,
I'm not sure exactly. I'm just kind of doing whatever at the moment. No particular build in mind. Always remember to level up your adaptability. Which I can't remember off the top of my head what the cap that I'm looking for is. I think it's like 19 or 22 or something. I think then you start getting diminishing returns.
I'll be around.
So, okay. So I'm gonna be heading back to go to the other boss. One that actually is a boss. This cathedral straight up looks like the actual one in Anne Orlando. Look who it is. Old friend. This one definitely threw me for a loop the first time. I was like, what? Ornstein is really here? How did he survive? What happened? But just like with Dark Souls 3, kinda, it's not exactly true. Like, I think even with Dark Souls 3, we're not entirely sure if the Ornstein we encountered in Dark Souls 1 was the actual one, or if the one that we find in, was it Archdragon Peak, where we find his armor, if that was the real one. But anyways, we got this guy who most certainly is not Ornstein. And interestingly, he doesn't have any lightning attacks, but instead he has like dark attacks with his spear. He's also way slower than Ornstein was in Dark Souls 1. And of course missing his little friend. Which makes this fight a breeze in comparison. It's so funny the way he just like briskly walks towards me. But I will say, his armor, I think, definitely looks better than the original golden one. Black and red looks so nice. There we go. The Leo ring. A very good ring in Dark Souls 1. The one I'm probably not going to be using for this. And instead of, oh, I'm checking out the stonework here. Definitely supposed to be Gwyn, I think. It's like, he's got the sword, he's got the robes, and just some more, like, homages to Dark Souls 1. And maybe these people had originally thought
transient being
that Gwyn had a sort
this
of, like,
is no place
bird
for one
design.
such as you.
Reminds me a lot of actually
Be gone.
Horus in
You are not
Egyptian
needed.
mythology, who I
Transient
think
being.
represented the
You
sun,
would never make it. Be
which
gone.
makes sense why, you know, here he is with a hawk head here. Just another connection between Gwyn and the sun. Looking good. And I kind of talked over him there, but this is just an NPC for a covenant that I won't really be getting into. One that's basically the Dark Moon Covenant from Dark Souls 1, where they're all about invading sinners. Checking out these shields. But I won't be invading any sinners in this playthrough. Yeah, there's the item that you would use. Instead, I'm going to be committing the first sin. Because I want that halberd.
You are good to judge.
Yeah, this is the ultimate challenge. What a challenge that was. It's a pretty good weapon to get early on. But pretty heavy. 72%. Don't really want that. Even though there isn't really fat rolls in Dark Souls 2, the equip load does affect the speed of your rolls. So I think ideally you want to be like around 50 or 40%.
Bearer of the curse, seek less vigilant.
Bearer, seek less. Alright, so let's talk about Dark Souls for a little bit here. About the series entirely, I guess. And without getting into potential spoilers for those that aren't privy to the story and characters of Dark Souls 2, I'll touch on this without too much specifics. And I'll save my full thoughts for once I finish this playthrough.
Thank you, God.
But, you know, because I had the misfortune of forgetting to have my mic on, but also later on you're going to see I'm going to be wandering around for a little bit trying to find a certain someone, I figured this would be a good opportunity to talk about some things. And what I want to talk about are some of the core themes of the Dark Souls series, specifically cycles, loss, and perseverance. Certainly there's a lot more than just those three things. Even in just one game, you could focus on some of the characters and find a lot of things to ponder about. But to keep it pretty concise, I'm going to keep my main topics to those. And in each one of these games, you're a nameless, unremarkable nobody. Although I would say the Ashen one in Dark Souls 3 is at least noteworthy for having made it to the kiln and attempting to link the fire. But of course, they end up not being strong enough or having a big enough soul to actually continue to link the flame. Or maybe after so many times trying to link it, it just wasn't really working anymore. So that's some accomplishment for him, I'll give him that. And my interpretation of that is from the gameplay of all these, from each Souls game, you're always starting from nothing and kind of working your way up, collecting all these souls and becoming stronger. I mean, that's how you level up after all, is using souls. So I think it makes sense that you have to go on this journey to get a larger soul to link the fire. And it's through that you become stronger. Unless you just find a great soul sitting around, like the biggest gaslighter in Dark Souls history, Gwyn. But even with finding these great souls, or having one yourself, eventually the fire's gonna go out, ushering in an age of dark, where hundreds or thousands or maybe millions of years later, the flame will ignite and a new Gwyn will find it. And the ending of Dark Souls 3, where there's this confluence of all the kingdoms and lands and even time itself into this like singular point, I feel like could be the intended way the Age of Fire ends. But it could also be that was only the case because so many times of linking it, eventually this is just what happens if you strain things too far. This is all a pretty simplistic way of going about it. The universe of Dark Souls exists in a cyclical nature. We don't know for sure which came first, sort of a chicken and egg thing, but it's not really important and you could headcanon it to go whichever way. But let's just say that things started out cold and dark until eventually a flame ignites. And this flame provides for the people of the world to exist in a way I interpret to be similar to our own. And I'm going to cut myself off here because we have Lucatiel.
What is it? I don't know you, and you don't know me. Things are better that way. You are an odd one. Normally, people keep a safe distance when they see this mask. But you... I'm called Lucatiel. From the land of Mira to the far east, across the mountains. They say Drang Lake brims with powerful souls. And so I came to claim my share. But what a strange place. Even the rumors did not prepare me. You are an odd one indeed. I've always made a point of avoiding people, while you've made a point of engaging me. I can see that you are mid-journey. If you require assistance, I will help you. I come from Mira, a land of knights. My sword is always ready. Don't hesitate to call upon me. Whatever happens, I won't be missed.
I'll miss you, Lucatile.
I come. Don't hesitate.
She's one of my favorite characters in Dark Souls 2. She's got a pretty interesting story. But anyways, we've never had a Dark Souls game that takes place during the prime time of the Age of Fire. And I would love for a Dark Souls spin-off that's like a slice of life or some sort of like traditional RPG or something during that time period. The setting of Dark Souls just has like so much room for different types of games that could fit in, besides the Souls-like we're used to. And because it's all like cyclical in nature, you could just like throw it in there and it wouldn't necessarily need to be canon, or you have to like account for certain things. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. So we have this Age of Fire that for a time is pretty great, so we're told. But just like with all things, eventually it comes to an end. And over time the flame grows dim and fades away until we return again to the dark that we started with. The Age of Dark is also not explored at all, really. It's implied to be a time where humans become the dominant force, and where a Dark Lord rises up from men to subsume Gwyn's spot as like the top dog. And one of the Dark Souls 3 endings, we see what could be the very beginning of the Age of Dark, where after extinguishing the flame within our bodies, we wake up to see the reddened eclipse that had previously looked like the dark sign, now has this white glow and resembles humanity. And I don't mean like the human population, but the item from Dark Souls 1. And the world itself appears more dimmed than it was before doing this. And that's about all we get. So I would assume that humans are no longer tied to the flame in this ending, in the Age of Dark, since, you know, the fire doesn't exist anymore, and we're back to how they originally were. And for some unknowable amount of time, this will persist until things start to stagnate and the arch trees and the everlasting dragons return, or the flame ignites and begins the Age of Fire again. This is the nature of the whole Dark Souls universe. Although, potentially, there's a third option that exists out there, which is explored here in Dark Souls 2. Once we get through this, I can talk about it some more, but I don't want to spoil anything yet. But suffice to say, the world rotates between fire and dark over and over, and that's just the way things are. This cycle is at the very core of the setting, and besides just being a backdrop, it explains the actions of basically every plot point. The motivations for almost all the characters we interact with are because of the waning fire, and those that wish to preserve it, or snuff it out, or maybe escape to somewhere else and find some sort of alternative. And looking at it from an outside perspective, it could seem to be restrictive, but I think of it in maybe a more positive way, in some sort of reassuring manner, to know that, like, eventually things go back to how they were. That eventually, even if not in your lifetime or your children's lifetime or even their children's lifetime, things will get better. Regardless if you support the Fire Foundation or some sort of dark dominance. But let's talk about the giant flaming ring in the room, the dark sign. Our first glimpse into the earliest time period of Dark Souls is appropriately in the intro cutscene of Dark Souls 1, where we see the Lord Souls discovered by Gwyn, Nito, the Witch of Iceland, and the Furtive Pygmy during the Age of Ancients, which to me is a sort of transitory period between the Age of Dark and Fire. It's a very gray, foggy, stagnant place where seemingly the reigning forces are these everlasting stone dragons. There isn't too much explanation on what the species of creatures are like during this time period, but we do have the race of gods and giants with Gwyn and presumably the Witch of Iceland. And then we have the pygmies. These we're not entirely sure how many pygmies there were at this point. It could have just been the one, but they are the primordial progenitor of humanity. And this pygmy finds the Dark Soul among the Lord Souls that
Who are
Gwyn
you?
and the rest of them. Oh,
I, Gavlan. Gavlan will, Gavlan deal. Gavlan wants soul. Many, many soul. What you want. With Gavlan, you will, you deal.
another super important NPC in Dark Souls 2, central to the plot, I'd even say, Gavlan. Fantastic character.
Gavlan will, Gavlan deal. Gavlan,
Gavlan
what?
will,
With Gavlan.
Gavlan deal.
What? With Gavlan. Many deal, many thanks.
Anyways, before I was interrupted there, the pygmy splits up the Dark Soul, and together with Gwyn, they vanquish the dragons, and that's where the Age of Fire begins. Sometime after this, Gwyn brands humans with the Dark Sign, which links their fates to the fire. And in this way, humanity assumes a fleeting form, no longer immortal. They exist probably similarly to us today. They live and die, a tender, exquisite existence, though an unnatural one, and one that was forced upon them forever. Gwyn does this to help motivate humanity into accepting the Age of Fire and even to throw themselves upon it to keep the flame lit. And when the fire begins to fade, the flame within the dark sign weakens, and humans begin to exhibit traits of their original self, such as undeath, which originally wasn't an issue, but after living who knows how long under Gwyn's guiding hand, this is seen as a curse. It's something to be removed. And the solution given to them is to link the fire, like their martyr god of sunlight did. Failing to do so results in becoming hollow. Now, I don't mean that you will become hollow because the fire wasn't linked or something, but just that humans at this point have been gaslit into believing that linking the fire is what they should do. It's the right thing for them to do. And so this goal becomes a central driving force, and failing to do so over and over, potentially dying dozens of times, it can damage your mind to go through this, and can cause a cascading wave of depression combined with an overwhelming sense of no longer having any motivation. Hollowing is one of my favorite aspects of Dark Souls. It represents a loss of oneself, a loss of one's goals, and a loss of one's dreams. Over time, you lose pieces of yourself and to eventually become an empty husk with no soul remaining. It's a depressing fate to forget your family and your friends and even your own name, why you even exist. And so you spiral into this feedback loop of loss. This is shown to us in a lot of cases throughout the series, but I think most well done in the character that I'm going to be having so much trouble trying to find in here, Lucatiel. Her whole story is about this idea of hollowing and coming to grips with what's going on. For us in the real world, we have to worry about a sudden death. But in this world, everybody has the potential of slowly losing themselves piece by piece in what I think is a fate worse than death. It's like everybody in this world has the potential of built-in dementia that they're going to be experiencing. So maybe, to give Gwen some credit, this does serve as a motivation for the undead humanity to forge ahead towards their goal, which presumably was to link the fire, but, you know, perhaps during their journey they come to a differing opinion. Regardless of what their end goal is, it doesn't change that our characters in this series are destined to struggle. Dark Souls is famously known for its unrelenting difficulty, and FromSoft were aware of this very early on. I mean, the expansion for Dark Souls 1 is called Prepare to Die, so struggle is very much expected. But it was never meant to be some sort of insurmountable obstacle that's difficult just for the sake of it. It's not to torture you or humiliate you, but it's to serve as an accomplishment. It's meant to be an adversary to overcome. And this is meant twofold, both in-game with our characters dying like 37 times to Ornstein and Smo, and many, many other times to all the death traps awaiting us, but also to the player playing the game. My first memorable experience with the Dark Souls series was walking home from high school, thinking about how it's taken me days to beat the gargoyles because I was so bad. I didn't even know you could two-hand your weapon. But once I did beat them, I felt ecstatic. And not in a relief sort of way, not a thank God that was awful, I'm glad to never have to do that again, but in a way that felt good. And I carried that forward for the rest of the games in the series. And there were far, far, far more difficult fights for me than the first real boss of Dark Souls 1. But it never deterred me from my love for the series.
Many thanks.
And that's because of the perseverance in overcoming it. It wasn't to brag about my skills to my friends, but to do it for myself, to have this goal of beating the bosses and seeing it through. That's the bedrock of the series, and it's presented in such a fulfilling way, both in the lore and in the gameplay. Besides being a challenging, rewarding, fun game, the Dark Souls series means a lot to me, and although I've never done a list of my personal best games, I would imagine these games would rank really high, with, of course, Dark Souls 2 at the top. And that's where my notes end, so I'm back to live commentary. I think at this point, though, I was pretty close to being out of here. I struggled a lot in trying to find where Lucatiel Summon Sign is. I couldn't remember if you needed to be in human form or not, and I think that was what really tripped me up, because I end up walking past where her summon sign is supposed to be like 3 times because I was hollowed and couldn't see it. I think as a result I ended up getting everything else that's in this area. Here's Carillion.
I see light, but it remains dim. I am Carillion, and I've no interest in the magic impaired. I see light. I am Carillion.
Basically just calling me stupid. Which, you know, is fair enough. I think there's a way of creating a shortcut here, but I couldn't remember how to do it. Not that it really matters. This isn't exactly an area you're going to be coming through very much. I think it's just for those that end up dying a lot going through here. Which this area, you know, I think if you don't know what you're doing, could do that for you. You've got these guys throwing like oil bombs at you, lighting you up. You got them like hiding next to the docks and in these corners. You got these dark dweller guys that if you don't know they are scared of fire, could easily kill you. Or if you don't have weapons that they're weak against, like fire or lightning. Like, I know she's somewhere around here, but I couldn't figure out where. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna end up cutting straight to where I find her, because I think I wander around here for like another 10 or 15 minutes or something. Of course, this is ×2 speed, so it's a lot quicker, but even so, it was a long time of me really struggling to figure out where she is, and right here I found the little secret illusory wall. I remember that was also somewhere around here. It's a little bit, you know, harder when you don't have the little message signs on the ground telling you where things are. And right here is where I finally realized maybe I should pop a humanity, and that was why I couldn't find her this whole time. Too much Elden Ring really scarlet rotted my brain into forgetting how things used to be back in the good old days when things were less convenient.
I see. I am.
Definitely a nice progression forward from how things used to be. So a lot of quality of life changes have gone throughout the series. Like a huge one for Dark Souls 2, which, you know, is like such a massive improvement, is just the being able to look at your equipment while you're putting it on, so you can fashion souls to the max. One of the best quality of life changes they ever made. Especially for Dark Souls 2, because it has like such amazing drip and such great outfits. And this is right about where yep, there she is. Finally. Umbasa. Can actually progress and get out of here now. It's important to summon her for this because you have to do that to complete her quest line. So if you want to see it through to the end, you gotta make sure to summon her. Even though she's totally unnecessary for this boss fight. Which is kind of a pushover. Yeah, gotta be careful with her. Make sure she doesn't get tripped up on anything. Go on to the spooky ship. And finally, here we are. Doing here? Okay, topping off. Got to be prepared. Flexile Sentry. Not a very advanced boss, but a fun fact about him is that the water inside this boss room actually slowly raises over time. So, if for some reason you were like playing it really conservative and taking your time with him, eventually, you know, the water will get up pretty high and will slow you down a lot, which I think is all the effects of it, besides making your character wet. Which, you know, might have been a nice thing if, like, the boss had some electric attacks or something. Maybe punish you for taking your time. See you later. Thanks for the help, Lucatiel. And now we're done with No Man's Wharf, and we're gonna set sail and get out of here. Our cartographer table, or whatever that is. Heading on over to Las Bastille. Now, this is a way that I almost never go. I always go the normal route from the Pursuer to get over here, so it's really gonna throw me off when I continue from this point, since it's a pretty unfamiliar way of going throughout this zone. But that's it. That's where we're stopping here for now. So, see you in the next one, which will hopefully be a lot sooner than a year from now, and, you know, unless something terrible happens. And of course, more of the usual stuff for the channel coming out soon. Hopefully a Slay the Spire video next. I want to try and get as much of that in as I can before Slay the Spire 2 comes out in March. So, see you then.